So there's two parts to this presentation today, okay? The first part is the general stuff, yeah? The why, the what, the how in some cases. But the second part to it is really just showing you the information that's available to you, okay? So we've created a portal which renders all of the information that I'm going to discuss, and it's free to use, okay? There's no charge to you, you could use it. And what it does, it points you in the direction of the relevant information. So for example, one of the examples I'm going to use, I think, is the privacy laws of Singapore, I think it is. And if you go to the website, you can actually get the links to those documents in English, okay? We've not produced the content. The content belongs to the governments, okay? Right, so the format is quite straightforward. I'm going to talk a bit about global regulatory things, and then I'm going to demo the website to you, okay? Right, so let's ask a simple exam question. Okay, Con, do you want to go to the next one? Yes. Yeah. Simple exam question, right? If you answer yes to any of these, then this is for you. Okay, I think they'll be distributing the slides, so and if you've got any questions, feel free to ask. So, do you deliver services in a regulated industry? Right. When I mean regulated industry, I mean the banks, the insurance companies, manufacturing, those type. You work for local government, so that's regulated to some extent by central government. You work for central government.
Yes, regulated.
Much regulated. Which part of central government?
MOJ.
Oh, right. Okay. I worked there as well many years ago. Okay, so if you operate in multi-jurisdictions, in other words, if you operate in Europe, if you operate in the US, if you operate in Australia, if your organisation does that, then that's something for you. If you process or store personal data, right, okay, that's a common one. I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but that is the pattern is common across most countries, yeah. If you use regionally cloud-based services, if you use Azure, AWS, which regions you store your data in, all of that kind of stuff, then if you sell any consumer goods, okay, or if you provide advisory to government. MOJ is slightly different, yeah. But if you're a consultant that provides, yeah. If you've answered yes to any of those questions, or maybe, get the next slide, all right, then, sorry, back, jumping the gun, yeah. Then what you need to do is you need to understand the environment you operate in, the regulatory authorities and the regulatory compliance that you need to adhere to, and you need to factor that into your enterprise blueprints, okay? All right, so next. All right, so I'll put this up. This is just a simple use case. As a user, I need to know my system. So this is your users. This is not you as enterprise architects. This is a question that your users, your senior stakeholders would be asking you as an enterprise architect. Okay, next. Okay, and really, you'll have the slides, but what I'm trying to say here is that if you're non-compliant, if you don't follow the rules or the guidance, right, central government, if you don't follow the rules or the guidance, then the odds are you will get fined a financial penalty, okay? In your case, you may not get fined, but your customers, your tenants or whatever may fine you, yeah? So if you don't follow certain rules, then it could come back on you, your organisation, not you as an individual. Right, next. And this doesn't, it depends, what I'm going to show you now are some of the fines that have been imposed, yeah? And if you click them one by one, and the last one's the most interesting one. So the UK just fined nationwide last year. We probably all read about that, 44 mil. In Hong Kong, China's bank was fined. Australia, Bank of India, the Reserve Bank of South Africa. You see there's a pattern there, yeah? And I use banks as an example, but all companies have been fined, insurance companies have been fined. It's not just banks, yeah?
Can you give some examples though, please, of what they're getting fined for?
Yeah, well, Nationwide was for failings in KYC procedures. So basically, they weren't vetting their customers. In India, this one was a particular case where they had given money to, basically, if you give money to someone who's on a watch list, right? If you don't have,
find out you've been laundering money.
Yeah,
things like that.
But not only that, sometimes you could get fined if, all right, the outcome is you've given money to someone, and that may have been a mistake, but the processes that you followed weren't stringent enough. So here, the FCA, they'll fine you. But what I wanted to show you here, right, is that fines happen across the globe. It just doesn't happen in one place, yeah? And what I wanted to highlight here is in Brazil, right, Paraguay, the Central Bank of Paraguay, imposed a fine on one of Brazil's banks. So the thing is, if you're a Brazilian company and you're operating in Paraguay, you may get fined. Yeah? Your parent company will get fined. So with that kind of backdrop, yeah, what you want to do is you want to make sure you've got preventative measures in place.
And the fines can be millions, can't they?
Well, they were all in the hundreds. Standard Charter, Deutsche Bank, I mean, recording this, but sometimes the fines are just considered part of doing business.
They're already costed in.
A £40 million fine for someone who's giving you £200 million worth of business.
They'll have a contingency plan.
Okay, so this, if you've read the book, you've probably seen this, yeah? Okay. At the core of any organisation, at the core of any enterprise, we have the business operating model, yeah? Okay. What are the drivers to make us? What are the drivers that drive our business? Yeah, and that's all done at the business operating model. Yeah, and the impact on that has downstream impacts. So I just want you to look at this wheel. Right. Now, if I take this wheel and I'll say, right, okay, next. If we look at that and we say, right, there's two sides to this coin. Right. So imagine this is our enterprise. Okay, this is our enterprise, but we're going to look at it from two lenses. Yeah? One is the operational lens. That's system specific. How are you running your business on a day-to-day business? Yeah, sorry, on a day-to-day basis, right? So we're looking at it through that operational lens. Yeah. And the other one is the core business. Not business model. Yeah, it's not B2B, B2C, all that. What we're saying is, how are you running your core business? What are the drivers that are affecting your core business? So, for instance, government legislation may impact your core business, right? Okay, so if you look at it from two lenses, one is the operational side and one is the core side, right? And then you can say, right, okay, as enterprise architects, we need to always have this in mind. Can you hit the button again? It'd be nice if we had a little flicking thing, wouldn't it? Right. So if we take one operational, I'm going to use one example, and I'm going to use an EU example. And I've used this because it's recent, right? So DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act, came into play. They actually put it out in 2022, but it's now in play. So if you are a financial organisation, you're operating in the EU, or you're operating outside of the EU, but you're registered in the EU, it's never just, you need to be aware of this. Now, I'm not going to go through the Act. You can read it yourself. But if you click the next button, the Act talks about risk management, incident management, it talks about information sharing, it talks about this oversight framework. There are over 58 articles in that. Right? Now, how many of, is anyone involved in any infrastructure work? Right. Have you read that?
I've said it's all compassing. It's all compassing.
Exactly. So, but the thing is, as an enterprise architect working on the infrastructure side, you need to be conversant with that, don't you? You cannot get away from it. So when we talk about DORA, and you know, that's just one example. There are others because other countries, this is just the EU, yeah? Other countries have their own versions of this, yeah? Now, so if you're looking at something from the operational lens and you're operating in Europe, you need to be aware of that. Agreed? Okay. Now, that's just one of the few things, yeah? Just one of many things, yeah? Okay. So that's the operational lens, and it's very much about running the business on a day-to-day basis. It's about, you know, threat. There's a massive section on the threat prevention,
Vulnerability and all that.
Something. Anyway, yeah, I've read it. Yes. Anyway, so that's the operational side. Can we move to the next one? Right. So, say you're a bank, UK bank. The odds are, and the reason I put this, there are trade associations. Yeah. Okay. So there are trade associations that your organisation may belong to. And what they do is they provide guidance. They don't tell you you must do it, right? But they provide guidance. And the odds are you need to adhere to that guidance, yeah? So if we look at JMLSG, the banks tend to follow their guidance, and I've shown you, can you hit the next button? Right. And it's issued. When you issue guidance, it's like you can or cannot do it. If you don't do it, it's the red mark against you. And here, Treasury has basically approved this. Yeah, Treasury has basically approved this. So you've got your base policies and procedures. And it's up to you whether you follow it. But if you don't and something goes wrong, your fine's going to be a lot higher. Yeah.
So it's really a code of practice rather than
it is
a legal obligation.
It's not, yeah, exactly. It's not mandatory. But in real terms, it probably is. Yeah.
Well, that's probably better if everybody plays ball, isn't it? You know, they don't have to worry.
Once you start looking under the hood of some of this in different countries.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the message from this slide is there's two lenses to look at things. One is the core, which affects your business operating model. That could be stuff that, you know, here's from a working group, or it could be stuff that you must follow. For example, a core business element that everyone must look at is sanctions. You've got to look at sanctioned individuals, boats, ships, planes, all that. And it's very hard to keep up to date because the Americans are sanctioning people left, right, and centre, and it's just constantly changing. Right? We pull in sanctions data every 2 days, and I'm not joking. We look for deltas in changes, and there's sometimes quite a few. Anyway, we'll come back to that. So the message from this slide is, look, there's two lenses that you need to look at as an enterprise architect. One is the business and the drivers for change. The other is the operational. Now, if we were to transpose that onto the stack, the next one. So this is my canvas, right? You don't need to look at it, but you don't need to look at it in detail.
It's like a
Typical
work.
architect.
It looks like a work of art.
It is a work of art, mate. It took me years. But anyway, we come back.
Graphic design.
Anyway, let me finish. This is quite important. So there's two layers to this, the business centric and the technology centric. Yeah. Okay. So if we were to take any organization, right, at the business operating model layer, you would be looking at the external forces, drivers for change, the structure, conduct, performance, all the stuff they teach you in these business schools. Yeah. Okay. Then as we move down, we start looking at business processes, capabilities, then enablers, execution, all that kind of stuff, yeah? Okay, so imagine this is a canvas for your organization, okay? All right, now, what we're now going to do is we're going to look at the various regulatory stuff out there, right? Business specific, system specific, and we're going to transpose that onto the canvas to show the impact it has, yeah? Okay, next. Right, so we're going to start looking at three specific domains or areas or whatever you want to call them. And we're going to look at the system-specific regulations. Okay? Okay. Let's go. Right. So let's look at cloud hosting. There has been a massive drive to store to move away from on-premise into the cloud, right? Whether you agree that's a good thing or a bad thing is not up for debate. I personally don't think it's a brilliant thing, right? Because you're exposing your business to risk, but there is a big move to cloud, right? Now, can you just hear it again, I think? Yeah. Okay. Every country, right, that we looked at, and we look at a lot of these countries, right? Every country we look at has a digital strategy of some kind, right? Okay. What I'm doing here is I'm just highlighting, this is Mexico's, yeah. And it's a good document. It's a very well written document. All right. If you get a chance, go to the website and click on the link and you can view this document. It's a very good document, worth reading. But the thing is, there's a common theme, right? And the common theme is this. If you're going to move your data outside of the country's boundaries or outside of its borders, you've got to either show control or there has to be agreements in place, or in some cases, they won't let you do it. Okay, there are certain countries that will not let you move the data outside of the country. Okay, so cloud policy, I'm not going to harp on about that because we all are going through this cloud journey at the moment, or we've been through it. But the thing is this, right? So if we were to look at cloud hosting policies and we look at Mexico's national digital strategy, right? Okay, we've got one, everyone's got one, right? We know that it affects our business operating model because it is the forces, external forces on our BOM, right? It's also a major driver for change, right? That national strategy can be classed as a driver for change, right? So it's affecting our top layer business operating model. As we go down, we start thinking, right, okay, so we're now looking at the whole ecosystem as enterprise architects, and we start saying, right, well, hold on. Cloud, if we're going to go down cloud, how does that affect my capabilities and services that I'm rendering to my business, right? Which supports the BOM. This is all upwards, yeah? We know it's going to impact business capabilities because we're moving business service to this, especially if we're doing SaaS or PaaS or any of that kind of stuff. We know it's going to affect reporting because in some countries you must report where the data is hosted. Now, Microsoft and AWS, they do a fantastic job. They do the documentation for you, right? But that's not always the case. The document's not always up to date on certain countries, okay? So we've gone down to here. We said data and information services, persistence, and then hosting. You see how I've taken cloud-based services and I've transposed them onto the stack. Yeah, and that's basically, as an enterprise architect, that's what you're doing. You know your organizational stack, you've got a policy or a directive that comes from, one of your regulators, and then you transpose that onto your stack. Make sense? Right, so that's cloud hosting. Let's go to the next one. Data privacy. I'm not going to spend, can you hit that thing again? I'm not going to spend too much time on this because this is bread and butter. Yeah, we've got GDPR, we've got the UK's own version of it, and everyone's got one. What I've done here is I've pointed to the Japanese one. So if your company is doing business with Japan, you need to be aware of their Personal Information Protection Commission documents. Yeah. So you see what I'm doing now? What I'm saying is that if your organization is doing any business with a Japanese company, right, and you're transmitting data between the two, not only do you have to worry about the UK GDPR, you've got to also think about what the Japanese policy is. Yeah?
So is there a tool set that does that for you?
Huh?
For all these different countries, is there a tool set that helps you manage the deltas?
Not to some countries, like Australia, brilliant. They've got loads of nice little tools. Yeah. But no, each country is a bit selfish. They say, this is our data privacy policy. Either if you're doing business in our country or you're taking data out of our country, it is very...
So is that sovereign data though? So you know when you get into the nuance of sovereign data, for instance, data on oil, that you transaction on oil and transaction of letter of credits on oil. For instance, Nigerian protection, you can't take that data out. That data must be hosted in Nigeria. So there are certain nuances on financial transactions. How does this work when you have to do with sovereign data?
Right, okay. So China's a good example. China is a very good example because there's certain things you can't do with that data and you can't mask it. You've got to operate. If you want to operate in that country, you've got to stick by their rules. Otherwise, expect a fine. Nigeria, if you could send it to, if they've got an agreement with a third country, all right, then you can always use that as a gateway out, right? But you're treading on, you've got to be really careful. I'm not a lawyer.
Most people host in the country.
Most people do, but sometimes if you want to do financial reporting, you can always modify the data, remove any kind of personal data, and you can. It's tricky. It's really tricky. A couple of years ago, I was doing some work for an insurance company. In Poland, they actually had the regulator had a specific thing. They said they did not want anything, despite EU, leaving the country. Okay, so data privacy, it's a kind of given, but always remember the recipient country has their own agreement. Don't fall into that trap of thinking I'm safe under UK law, right? Because the fine, remember what I showed about Brazil and Paraguay, it could come the other way. All right, next. Right, now the AI side, can you hit it again? All right. Should be a picture there, I think. Okay. Hit it again. Sorry, that was a picture of the AI American. They're changing left, right, and centre at the moment. Now, there are legislations. If you get a chance, have a look at the legislation of the UAE. Right. Okay. If you want to see some really nice, well-documented AI legislation, look at some of the stuff that's coming out of the Middle East. Miles ahead of everyone. All right. Okay. In provisioning, they've got the guardrails. You just have to read it. Yeah. Okay. So we know AI affects the whole stack. Yeah. We know it affects the data layer. We know it affects our technology services. We know it affects the whole stack. Now the thing is, a lot of the AI acts that we looked at are close to data privacy acts. Yeah. Okay. And yeah, this affects the stack, and it's the common thing I would say is that it's constantly evolving, right? And countries are writing their own. A lot of countries have written not regulatory kind of guidance, just guidance notes on best practices, but they're not. Have a look at Malaysia. They've done some really good stuff, but none of it is really you must do X, Y, Z. How are you going to be compliant? They're still finding their way. Right, next.
So in terms of Australia.
The Australians.
Well, the reason why I wanted to ask that question, we all know Section 14 of the EU AI Act.
Right. Well, we don't all, but...
Well, it's coming into force. Right. They've postponed it to 2027. Right. Businesses, because business saying they don't have time.
None of them
get ready for that imposition.
Right.
But if you look at what the Australians have done in terms of mandatory, I think they are in that market compared to what the EU has done. I think there is a difference. And I think from a business perspective, I love what the Australians done than what the Europeans have done.
Yeah, but then you find with the Europeans, they put out a paper, right? So DORA came out in what?
2021?
Yeah, they didn't actually, the new modifications, because they keep modifying it. So that didn't come out until last year, right? The Europeans take their time. The Australians, okay, they're fast, right? But look at the Middle East, right? So if you want to see good stuff, look at them. And yeah, I'll show you the links later. Anyway, right, okay. So that was system specific. okay? And to be honest, no-brainers, cloud policy, data hosting, AI, and there are others as well. I just put 3 up there. And what I was trying to show you was that these all affect the lower layer of the stack, yeah? Okay, and these are things that, I'm not being funny, you would be looking at on a regular basis. Right? You will be, because it's cloud hosting, it's data privacy, AI, you will be looking at. Now, what we're going to talk about now, you may not be looking at these, right? You may not even, it may not even be at the forefront of your mind, yeah? But depending on what country you deal with, you need to look at these. So let's start with bribery, okay? Bribery, go for it. Sorry, this is just, yeah, this was, right, next. Right, okay, we all know what bribery is, yeah? You're trying to coerce someone into doing something they shouldn't be doing, all right? Okay, so, can you hit it again? Certain countries, every country has a law. We've got a law, regarding the Bribery Act, yeah? Okay, we've got a law. Every country has a law, some don't. We've noticed some countries do not have bribery related. They've got notes on it, but they don't have any laws. The best one we come across, right, is the Malaysian one, right? Now, when I say the best one we come across, that means it's well articulated, right? They give you the rules that you should follow, the guardrails, and in some cases they do have examples. But the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission, they actually published something with the penalties and all of that. And what they said was conducting, offering, and enlisting. And I highlighted that because that you see that a lot. Okay, right. So you know what? You're an enterprise architect. Your company's doing business in Malaysia. Big deal. You just don't want anyone to do any corruption. Yeah. What do? Well, you go back to your stack. You go back to your ecosystem, and you think, right, how is that act going to affect my stack, yeah, for my organization? Well, we know it's going to affect the top part. We just know it, yeah? Okay. But the layer below the business operating model are the processes that enable the execution of the services for that. So we know we have to, when we talk about anti-corruption or bribery, we know we have to look at the business processes, yeah? Okay. What we document business processes a lot. Okay. And we know that the capabilities and services that will be affected will be business specific, yeah, because it's the way you're conducting business. We know that out of this, you've got to do some kind of reporting, yeah, and analytics, right? So it'll affect your analytics, data integrity, logging, monitoring, security and governance. You see how this one little anti-corruption act can impact your stack. Okay? Now, before we go on, and I just want to reinforce this, yeah? Every country does have unique laws, right? And I didn't read them all, but I've read a few of these bribery. There are some strange wordings in certain countries, okay? All right. So if you're doing business in Nigeria, right, okay, you need to look at the bribery laws in that country because the penalties differ as well. Okay, next. Right, consumer protection. This is standard across many countries. And we all know what that is, Sale of Goods Act, all the usual kind of stuff, right, okay? A lot of the consumer credit related acts that well, the ones I looked at anyway, have a lot to do with credit card transactions, yeah? So as I read these consumer credit acts or policies, and you can go and look from the website, you could go and look at some, just they all seem to have something to do with credit card transactions, and they try and protect that. There's a bit at the bottom. So.
I think there's also, in terms of now crypto trading, new dimensions.
I've not seen many rules and regs on that. There's
the Americans have
guidelines.
The Americans who have come out with it, certain countries have also gone with the Americans in terms of enforcement and giving teeth
Yeah, but don't you find with the Americans, right? So we pull in their stuff they're constantly changing. They are constantly changing. With the new government, so there was so one of the things we do on our website is we got the URLs for the documents and we're constantly doing integrity checks, yeah? Okay. What we found with the White House was those URLs were becoming obsolete. They were deleting stuff, putting stuff up. So our posture rating, because we give every country a posture rating, our posture rating for America has gone down because they come out with some great stuff, but they're constantly changing it. And it's very difficult to follow. Now, that's really difficult if you're trading with them as well. This is where I would just let the lawyers handle this, yeah, because it's constantly changing. Right, okay. So the example I gave here for consumer protection was New Zealand, because it's well documented, okay? And the thing about this, they don't have one act, and the reason I gave New Zealand, they've got several. So they've got Privacy Act, Consumer Guarantees, Fair Trading Act, yeah? Each one of these has a different dimension, but bundle them together, they're talking about consumer protection. In some countries, you'll have one document, all right, that you got to follow. But in some countries, like as New Zealand, New Zealand, they got several, okay? Next. Right, anti-money laundering, this is a given, right? Okay. Again. And that has a massive effect on your whole ecosystem because it's affecting your applications, your business processes, it's affecting your data services, it's affecting everything. Login is big, right? Okay. So the Swiss, why did I give the Swiss as an example? I cannot remember why I used Switzerland as an example, okay? But anything to do with money laundering, counterterrorism, all that, FAFTA. If you read the FAFTA rules, that saves you reading half of this stuff, yeah? Okay. Financial Action Task Force, yeah, just read their stuff. Next. Fraud, we all know what fraud is. In some countries, the rules are pretty lax. Yeah, here again.
Well, I want to ask a question. Sarbanes-Oxley.
SOX, yeah?
Yes. Now, in certain countries, there is an imposition, if you're American-based, that Sarbanes-Oxley would apply to your subsidiaries outside America.
Well, that's with most laws. If you're if you're an American organization, you know, even if you're an individual, your tax returns, you've got to do them. If you earn money in the UK, it's taxed in America. And that applies with a lot of countries, yeah? Right, that applies with a lot of countries. You got a regulation from a country here, but if you got subsidiaries acting elsewhere, they're all liable to that parent regulation.
Yeah, the lawyers have a view of that based on.
Wouldn't work otherwise.
Exactly.
If you have a subsidiary make no money, well, enforcement do.
That's right.
So,
The parent companies get no.
yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. So like you do the turnover of everything, otherwise you can't.
Just don't commit a crime, you know.
As easy as that.
You know what? This is the annoying thing about this one, right? Is I'm not going to name the companies, right? But in certain countries, it's part of doing business. Do you know what I mean? If you want to win the business, right, you may have to give a bit of bribery. You know, I'll give you an example. This is a really bad example, but this is a personal example. I was flying back from India, right? Went to see my family, you know, and I was with my brother. My brother and me are both born here, but he's never been back to India, right? When we got to the airport, I digress now, when we got to the airport, the security guards started hassling him, right? You know, not hassling, oh, let's have a look at your passport, you know, all the usual kind of stuff. And my brother, British born Asian, you know, he started arguing with the guy. So I had to go over, right? And in my hand, I had 500 rupees. I said, five, nothing much. And I said to the guy, oh, so do you have any children? He goes, yes, I've got a son. I said, can I buy your son a present? Right? Gave him 500 rupees. Me and my brother went through. right? Sometimes when you do business in certain countries, if you don't give it, you're not going to get the business. So some of these not anti-money laundering, but fraud and bribery, certain parts of the world, it's just the way business is done, you know? How you cover it up.
Like a tip.
Or taking people out, customers out for meals, is that bribery, you know?
Not really, because you put that as a company expense. But this is where, if we go back to the definition, it's about, inducing something. It's just, bribery.
I mean, I get where you're coming from. For some of us who've worked also abroad, the reason why I give you a story, a subsidiary of a major firm had a £60 million understatement, which wiped out 5 billion of the parent company's stock price. So you see this thing you just said about it, there's a great impact to any business. And as an enterprise architect, at that business process level, it is very important. I had to redesign the whole governance.
Cash accounting, basic cash accounting. But the thing is this, and I'm not going to name any companies, it's well documented, but some companies, large international global banks, one in particular, they know that part of doing their business, right? I don't want to give the companies that, but basically part of doing their business, they may get fined 100 million, right? But if you're doing 5 billion for a drug cartel, it's nothing. You take that hit. And some people do see it as a
transactional charge.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, come on, let's go. So that was, what country was that? Anyway, all right. Sanctions. This is my pet, right? Okay. So every country puts someone on a sanctions list, right? Okay. So America puts Iran on a sanctions list. Yeah. Right. Iran puts some British politicians on a sanctions list. Yeah. Everyone has sanctions list. If you're going to operate in a certain market, you've got to be aware of that. So, for instance, if you are transporting your oil on a ship that is registered to Iran, right, and it could be legit, you will get fined, right? Because the US has sanctioned, and if we trade with the US, it's just the way the world works, yeah? Okay. Now, the problem is, this is a real major problem. If you're an international company, right, you have to be compliant with the UN sanctions list. You have to be, right? Okay. If you break UN sanctions, you will get fined by someone, right? The other problem you've got is every country has its own sanctions list. We're talking about, is it called ECO, the West African?
ECOWAS.
They've got their own sanctions list, right? And they sanction each other and all of that kind of stuff. So what you have to do is you've got to be aware of these sanctions lists. Sanctions change on a daily basis, right? Okay. So you may pull a sanctions list in on a Friday, and by Monday that's changed, right? We're currently pulling in 40 sanctions lists, and we pull them in. We always look for deltas, right? And I'll demo it to you. Right? Okay, I'll demo that to you. But sanctions is really core part of you. This is 101 when it comes to KYC. Know your customer, yeah? Know your client, know your employees, everything, okay? Now, the thing is, it does have a massive impact on your ecosystem, because you've got to do data retention on every customer, the checks you did on that customer, yeah? You've got to do the COTS packages have to be able to cater. You've got to have the business processes, and it's a key driver in your business operating model. The cost of not doing it far exceeds the cost of doing it. Okay, and you could end up in prison. You could get fined. You could get flown to Guantanamo. You could get anything. Right? Okay, so the good news is, right, you know which countries you operate in, don't you? You think, right, I operate in, okay, I'm going to use you as an example. What's your business? What's your company doing?
Oh, we're in education.
All right, okay, right. not a good example.
No.
Right, okay. Say you've got a customer, say you walk into my door, right? Okay. Now, you want to open a bank account, right? Okay. You're not on a sanctions list in this country, right? But say, for instance, you are on sorry about it, an Albanian sanctions list, and they do have one, by the way. Yeah. Now, our bank does business with the Albanians, right? Now, we have to be compliant with their sanctions list, right? Now, you're a customer who's just popped over from Albania to open an account. We're breaking the law by giving you a bank account. Right? Now, you won't get fined in the UK, you will get fined in Albania. Okay, all right. I'll demo that. So, next.
And the one of the things that also becomes interesting, it's not just about the countries, right? So if you take oil, and I work for a US bank, and I'm aware of, like you say, some US banks take the view, ours doesn't, but some definitely take the view it's a cost of doing business, and they're willing to take regulatory fines in certain cases. But as an example, for oil, when it used to be only traded in dollars, you may be Britain to Albania, but because you're paying in dollars, you also then by very default end up in a US arbitrage in terms of sanctions as well.
True.
There you go. Operate in the yen. Okay, thanks. I didn't know we were having.
Yeah, we have people on.
All right. Okay. All right. So sanctions. I'll demo the site for you, and you can judge that for yourself. Did I get Vietnam? Yeah. Right. Okay. This is another one as well. So you've got your global sanctions lists, yeah, but then you've also got countries like Vietnam who have their own individual list of named people. There's about 15 of them, right, who are traveling all over the world, and it's something to do with the Reform Revolutionary Party. Okay. Now the odds are that person might get on a plane, fly to the UK, open a bank account. Bob's your uncle, he's got a bank account in the UK, yet he's on a terrorist watch list in Vietnam. Okay, how do you keep up with all of this? How do you keep up with it? I'm going to give you the answer soon. Right, next. And terrorism, this is default. Can you hit? Right, okay. So every country has a terrorism law of some kind. Yeah, in some countries, terrorists are freedom fighters, in others they're actual terrorists, and so on and so on. You've got to be careful with this one, right? But the thing is, again, it affects your business processes, it affects your capabilities and services, it affects your execution of your technology enablers, it affects your logging, your messaging, hosting, has a massive effect. And it goes back to your KYC again, yeah, knowing who you're doing business with. Right, now, this is a kind of one of the final notes. So what I've mentioned today is a lot of things, system specific, right, and business specific. There's loads of things that you have to be aware of, right? So as enterprise architects, if you understand your stack, right, you have to start mapping these things to your organization and say, right, okay, what are the gaps? What are we, how are we remaining compliant? Remember that first question I put up, yeah? As a stakeholder, you want to know how compliant you are. So what I've done here is I've said, right, okay, you know which countries you operate in, okay? You can easily, constantly scan the regulatory authorities. You know what industry you work in, right? Okay, so what I've done here, and I'm sure they're going to distribute these slides, is you need to have notifications of when these changes happen, right? Okay. You also need to understand the change type. Now, the reason I've put understand the change type, because is it a statement? Is it a fact? Bang, 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 you got to do it. Is it a policy where they say you must follow this policy? Or is it just a set of actions, set of guardrails, set of rules that, best practice? So you need to understand the change type. Once you understand the change type, you then start thinking, right, how does that impact my business operating model, right? And if it does impact your business operating model, the odds are it's going to have a downstream effect on your technology areas, you know, functional, non-functional, all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, okay. So that's the kind of final message, right? Next slide. And then what I wanted to do, I wanted to put the stack back up again, right, is understand your technology stack, yeah? Understand that, and then start thinking about how do these areas, and I've just picked a few, there are other areas as well, how do these affect your technology stack, yeah? Okay. Ooh, it's winding up there. Hi. I'll give you a quick walk through, but we're just winding up. The other thing also is, there's that book we had. Can I? So what we've done, right? Okay, in this book, right? In this book, right? Don't buy it. It's free. You can download it from our website. Okay. What we've done here is we've put down. Remember all those areas? We've put down what the for I think it's for 60 countries. Okay, for 60 countries, we've put down the rules and regulations where we can describe them, right? Okay, a year's worth of effort went into that, right? And the URLs. Now the URLs, obviously, they're out of date when it comes to the book. Yeah. Now the way you check the URLs, you'd have to go to our website. So can we switch to the website? So I'm going to demo the website to you. Have a look at it, play about with it. It is a tool for you to use, right? Okay. You could download this free from the website. Okay. Strongly recommend you do it. Okay. The new version of this will come out this year, but we're still working on it. There's so many URLs are changing at the moment. We got this program, it's called the Integrity Checker, and we have a list of all the URLs and they change color, red, amber, green. We've got so many reds at the moment because. Now what I'm going to do, so I hope you found that useful, right? What I'm going to do now is I'm going to quickly demo the website to you, okay? Got it? I'm going to bring it up in a minute.
You need some help to switch.
So, do you want that guy again?
Yeah.
All right, I'll just go get him. Bear with me for 1 minute. This is the piece de resistance. Just get the website up. That'd be great.
I've selected it, but I'm not sure how I can push it to the other screen.
So basically, throughout the presentation, I've talked about a lot of URLs.
It was that simple.
Right. Okay. So if you go to this website, kyc-data.com, right? So where is it?
I mean, you have to use the mouse.
What do you need? Okay, go to enter site. Right. Okay. So we got 3 core sections here. Okay. You got the sanctions section. Can you get rid of the chat system? That. If you go to sanctions, right? Now this you won't probably use. We've developed an API for this, right, where you can actually request. So basically, all the data we have here is available via API. So we've got 23,000 sanctioned individuals. We've got 3,900 entities. That's businesses, and these are vessels. Okay. All right. This is the free version, by the way. You're not getting a lot. So if let's pick a country. Give me a country. Anyone? This one? Kazakhstan, right? So there is one person from Kazakhstan who is on a sanctions list, and he's on the UK sanctions list. We don't have his passport number. We got his date of birth, and we got reasons why he's on the sanctions list. Okay. Now you might be saying personal info, blah blah blah, all of that. This is public domain info. That's provided by the UK Sanctions Authority. It's not our data. We're just rendering it. Okay. You can request to change it, but we will push you to the source. So if you want your data changed, you can download that record or whatever.
Is that also the Interpol red list?
Yeah, we got that. No. So if you want to see the Interpol red list, okay, that's in Europe. Yeah. Let's click on Europe. Okay. So select list. Okay, Interpol.
So it's there.
So basically what we do there, if you browse we just do a push up.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's pointless us scraping it, but you get to, all right. Everything's there. So these are the lists that you can view. All right, okay. These are the ones we give for free. Latvia, UK, Switzerland. All of these are provided, they're linked to third parties. We even provide the Russian, okay, we are a global site, we even provide access to the Russian sanctions lists, okay? So if I pick another one, so here, we've got another one, okay, let's pick a different one, not on the UK. Sanctions list, let's pick someone in India. They're all dodgy there. Right, okay. So this guy, okay, you can't do business with him because he's on the UN sanctions list, right? He's got various names, right? We don't have his address and he's got multiple passports, right? Okay. And that's a description of who he is, right? Now, if you use the API, you can actually make a request for this and your application can call it. Okay, all right. So that's sanctions. Now, so feel free to play about with that. And what we've done, so this is what we've been talking about today. All right, pick a country. Let's pick Nigeria, shall we? Where is this? Down here somewhere.
They've been promoted.
I want to do Nigeria.
Yeah, go down. Just like the trigger of the horn. Yeah.
Nigeria. Let's select all. All right, review. Okay, so what we've done with Nigeria, right? Now, forget the conduct of the individuals, right? Okay, forget the conduct. What we've done here is we've given it a posture rating. And what we're doing here is we're saying, right, the rules and regulations are in place, right? The Nigerians have done a fantastic job on their regulatory authority. Their central bank is producing great documents. Whether they follow it, right, that's another thing, right? But the thing is, as far as the documentation goes, the company register in Nigeria apparently is quite good. And so is the terrorism laws there. Now, bear in mind, that just represents the documentation that's available to us. It's nothing to do with how they're actually conducting. So we give everyone a posture rating. And you can compare countries as well. Okay. All right. Now, so all of those rules that we were talking about, okay, the anti-money laundering, bribery, consumer protection, data privacy. Let's click on that. It gives you a bit of information about it, and you can then go and view it. Okay. So this is the Nigeria's official gazette. This is their Data Protection Act. Yeah. Okay. So in one place, you've got access to that. Now, the problem we have, and please bear with us on this, is that the links are constantly changing. They're moving their servers. We're pinging these. And then the minute we have a read, we go in. It's a manual operation. There's no, there's a young.
No AI.
Well, you can't, you know what? Can't do this with AI because you've got to pull in the data so frequently, right? And you can't train. Like,
Well, you could, but
yeah,
extremely complicated.
and it's free. Come on, it's free, right? So basically, that was Nigeria. What we've done here is these are the things you could select. Sorry, we've blanked out AI and we've blanked out cloud. The reason for that is we're spending a lot of time researching this. And if you want that info, you got to pay for it. All right, that's fair, right? Okay. Now, the next thing I want to show you is you're doing some work in Nigeria. This is a new function we've just created for the legal firms out there, right? So you are doing some work on data privacy in Nigeria. Yeah. Okay. Now, what you want to do is you want to find an advisor. And we've got a list of Nigerian law firms, right? Okay. That will provide you information. Okay. That one, right? Now, we've just put this together. We've got 3,000 law firms in there that cover the globe. Yeah. But if you want to know more about the law firm, you then go to our legal directory. This is something we've just created. Okay. This one, so for example, you're doing business in Russia, right? You shouldn't be, right? But you're an Indian-based company doing business in Russia, right? You're not breaking any rules as far as you're concerned. But you need some legal advice. If I could find the mouse, you go there and you say, right, find me a Russian law firm, and we've got this law firm in Russia. Okay, it's not multi-country, it just does business there. Okay, now if you are a law firm and you are watching from any law firms, then what you can do is you can request to be added to our legal directory, for which we charge. Okay, all right. And there's two types of content: premium and normal. All right. And
how do you select the law firm?
You have to ask us. So basically, if you're a premium content, you come up first on our search list, and you get more information. So if I showed you,
you don't vet them. You just
no. We leave people like Chambers to do that. We're just telling you that these law firms are in that country. Okay, we don't do that. We let Chambers and others do that. Okay.
What do you mean Chambers to do that?
If you're working,
500 of those apps, they do that piece of work.
they interview the actual lawyers and they rank them and all of that. All we're doing is like a phone directory saying, here you go. And in the phone directory, if you want to put a fancier ad, you can, and we charge you for that. Okay. But the fact that you're looking at any of these regulations, right? The fact that you're looking at any of these, you're going to want legal advice. Okay. That's true. Anyway, the one thing I also want to show before we wrap up is this takes you to our API site. Okay. Now, there's two types of, you can play about with this as guest, right? Okay. Let's go in as con. This is a separate site that we monitor closely. Okay. The data also, although it's a replica, you can't, it's a replica data set. So you can't do a push, you can only do a get. There's only get.
It's only get.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here we've got sanctions API. So if you want to call our API, you've got all the parameters here. If you select a region, Africa, right, that will update the URLs and everything, so you make the calls. If you want to test, if you want to run it from your company, because your company may be blocking firewall, may be blocking this, you could go to our API test tool, you select sanctions, you select the attributes, select the region, Africa, we select Smith. We know this isn't going to exist, so this won't work, yeah? But I just want to show you how it works. You execute it, it tells you there's no record found in Africa with Smith, right? And then it also tells you, it gives you the signature. Okay? That's our API test tool. Knock yourselves out, play about with it. It'll only return back 2 records. That's it. You will not, the way it's set up in the background is for a test user or guest, it's only 2 records. But that's just to prove the API works.
Okay, so if you prove the API, you want to go further, do you have a regulatory sandbox that people can test with?
What we're doing, so the way we're going to do this is we're going to segment our data. So at the moment, this is all on 3 different servers and 3 different, so our API software is different from our main one.
Okay.
But we push the data set. So if you actually wanted our sanctions data, which we would then have to push, we'll set up a box for you. Okay. And that's for everyone. You will not share data with anyone, because if your data's, if you get hacked and we get hacked, then all the others are. Anyway, okay. So that is the KYC portal. right? Okay, some great work's gone into that. Feel free to use it. That is it. I hope you found that useful.